Hey guys, Judy here, and welcome to Digital Outlook. Well, today we have one of my special guests and friends, Jake Claver with Digital Ascension Group. Jake, welcome so much to the channel.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back.
We love having you on the show, and not only as a professional courtesy to us, but as a friend. We know you're a very busy man these days and flying all over the world. So it's great to have you. You're actually wrapping up our final week, 4 days of influencers answering questions and predictions for the future of XRP in the coming months. And so I really appreciate you being here. So I'm going to go ahead and just start firing away my questions, and feel free to answer however you want, and we'll go from there. So the
Beautiful.
first question is, with all the good news, with the SEC ending, 401ks allowing crypto, all the future things that are coming, the big question is, why, in your opinion, why hasn't XRP pumped yet? Because we've all been waiting. We've all heard, once the SEC case is done, and yeah, it hasn't happened. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I, to push it to the prices it needs to be, which I'm sure we'll get into, to be able to
Mhm.
facilitate global trade and do everything that they want to do with it, it needs to be a perfect storm. It can't just be, a gradual move to the upside. It's going to have to be an aggressive move. And to do that, you need a culmination of multiple things happening all at one time.
Mhm.
So the ETFs coming online, potential problems with Tether. You got the reverse carry trade. Many of the things that I've discussed in the domino theory, I think are going to have to culminate all at once. And so, I know that people are frustrated.
Mhm.
Um, and here's the other piece about the Ripple case, and I've stated this multiple times publicly as well. If the price of XRP is correlated to any news about Ripple, it could be a security of Ripple, right? Like you could use that to constitute that connection. And then, the judge's ruling that XRP is not a security of Ripple would be moot. It would be proof that it was. So I think that it's actually very good that we've seen the resolution of the case. And now the price has actually gone down a little bit since that's happened. So we need other catalysts outside of what Ripple's doing to cause the price appreciation. Obviously, it benefits them if it is a higher price and they're able to facilitate payment flows and use it at scale inside their business.
Mhm.
But I do think that it needs to be a culmination of a bunch of events, and I think there's maybe some coordination on that on the back end.
Mhm. So basically, it's kind of like a trickle effect where it goes up a little bit, little bit, little bit, or you think it'll take a bunch, something happening, a crisis maybe, and kaboom, and it goes up. Which one do you think it might lean towards? That's a
Well,
bonus question because I didn't ask the other guys that
the
question.
second one, right? There's a lot of people that are looking for a gradual rise in price, and they think that this cycle is just going to maintain the constraints of the past cycles.
Okay.
But for it to really get to the values that you and I are hoping for, and many people that hold XRP, it's going to need to be a significant amount of demand with a supply constriction for a supply shock to happen to push it to 50 or $100, which would kind of be the minimum values that would be required to even start facilitating some of these payment flows globally.
Okay. All right. That's good. I like that. Um, 2025 seems to be a major year for ISO 2022.
Mhm.
Fedwire funds fully transitional. In November, finally, the SWIFT deadline and all the transition there. All banks and financial institutes must upgrade the system. So, my question is, could the ISO 2022 be a catalyst for price prediction or appreciation?
You know, so ISO is a messaging standard, and there's a lot of conjecture out there about being ISO compliant or ISO tokens. In reality, there are no tokens or networks that are ISO compliant. There's a couple companies that have developed softwares that utilize that messaging within their infrastructure to facilitate payment flows for banks. And they use these distributed ledgers and networks, Hyperledger and the XRPL, to facilitate that instant value transfer. But they're two separate pieces. So it's kind of a predicator. Like it needs to happen before the price can really be, or the asset can be used at scale to be able to settle these things. If you did it beforehand, it would cause a bunch of problems. So today, until that's standardized across the industry, imagine if every country had their own type of shipping container, okay? And you wanted to move something from Singapore to New York, and they ship it out of Singapore and it gets to New York, and none of the infrastructure that they have there supports that style of shipping container. It would be horrible. And the world ran like that for a long time until they standardized the shipping container. And now if you go to any port in the world, all of them have the same infrastructure to be able to move that onto a semi or off of the boat. It streamlined logistics globally. And that's what ISO messaging does for the banks. It standardizes the way that they communicate with one another so that you can then move to an instant settlement mechanism and there's not a bunch of friction or reconciliation for those payments. So I think it's something that has to be put in place before we're going to see, significant price appreciation. And if it's not, then we're going to see some issues for people that aren't quite up to speed yet.
Okay, good answer. I like that. That answers a lot of questions. Another one. Do you base your analysis, your ideas, your thoughts on fundamentals, cycles, charts, or all three, or none of them?
I would say all of the above.
Okay.
I watch people across multiple sectors, even outside of crypto, on a regular basis that are experts in their field. And then I use, because most of them have blinders on. They're very good experts on whatever they know about, but they don't look at the whole macroeconomic system as it works together. So, you want to look at charts. You want to see if there's breadth opening up. You could look at the RSI, see if there's bullish divergence on the charts, see if markets are going to move up or down. More liquidity moving in and lower interest rates are going to expand things. It's going to make it much easier for things to move to the upside like people want. Now, if you're looking at macroeconomic events, you can have things like COVID, right? Nobody saw that coming. It was a black swan. And so if there's something else that happens outside of the constraints of the norm that isn't priced into the market, that's when you're going to see these very volatile moves, right? And that's some of the stuff that I talk about with the reverse carry trade and other things, leverage in the market. There's a lot of things that culminate to how I put, my opinion and my theories together. And it's not just short-sighted in any one of those verticals that you mentioned.
Okay, good. We get many comments and we hear from our viewers, we're never going to sell, or we're waiting for that special price. So my question is, what advice or caution do you give, if any, to that question?
I think everybody's in a different spot, right? So if you're later in life and you want to capitalize on this value and you understand the tax implications of selling, sell, right? But you want to know what you're going to do with that money. I think a lot of people arbitrarily pick price targets and they say, hey, on the way up, I'm going to take this here, take this there. But they don't have a plan for that capital to be able to offset the taxes or generate cash flow for them. They think they're just going to live off of that money. And I would challenge you. So there was a gentleman in Dubai that I met a few years ago at Swell. He had bought Solana at the bottom. Okay. FTX collapsed. He went in heavy and he did very well, obviously. But what he explained to me for his plan was very well put together. He said, at this price point, I'm going to take this much profit and I'm going to buy 2 condos here in Dubai. And I'm going to, in there, you don't have to worry about the taxes as much, but for cash flow, right? Cash flow matters for people to be able to live the lifestyle that you want. And you want to de-risk and add additional assets, to your portfolio. You can do that through borrowing or margining the asset, like we help people do at Digital Wealth Partners and through some of our other partnerships that we have. But there's some risk there. If there's volatility in the market, you could lose the asset. So some people feel safer not taking on that debt, capitalizing on the gains that they have, knowing they owe the taxes. But I would challenge people to make sure that they know where they're going to allocate that capital after. And if it's for your lifestyle, great. But just know, you want to continue to buy assets and not a whole bunch of liabilities. That's how lottery winners end up going broke because they're mismanaging that capital. Stewardship of capital is a skill. And if you've never had a bunch of money before, I would encourage you to start reading and learning from people. You guys are great. Working with professionals that can help you make sure you're not making those mistakes. And each one of those things is right for different people. Some people are in their early 20s or early 30s and they have a good paying job. They don't need the money right now. They can defer that into the future if they wanted to sell it. But again, if you're closer to the end of your life, maybe you want to enjoy some things. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you don't have philanthropic interests. Maybe you do. So there's just a lot of different constraints around which one of those you would choose. And I would highly suggest working with an advisor, a certified financial planner, to make sure that you're making the right decisions for your circumstance and your family.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. I know David and I sometimes talk and we say, maybe just leave some in anyway for your future kids or for whatever. If
Right.
you need to sell, you in a lifestyle, you don't have to it's not all or nothing. It's, you
And
can
I think that
different
that's
strategy.
probably the best strategy for most people. I would say it's on a bell curve on the how much you're going to sell versus how much you're going to keep, and
Mhm.
it's not an all or nothing thing. So like I
Exactly.
mentioned, so I just work it out for you. He said, I'm going to take, 30% of what I put in at $35 and I'm going to buy those condos because he knows how much the condos cost and he knows
Hmm.
how much he's going to make for profit. And he said, when he gets to $100, I'm going to take another 30%. I'm going to buy four more condos, right? And
Mm.
then the rest of it I'm going to let ride. So he had a plan for what he was going to take profit, when he was going to take profit, what he was going to do with that money, and he also left a piece in the market for the long term.
Yeah, that's actually a really brilliant strategy because it is important to have a plan, and that's when people take David's coaching.
Mhm.
He talks about that, and he also, when people have higher net value, he sends them to you guys because you're able to help facilitate bigger plans that maybe some of the people that don't have the higher end. So
Yeah, I
that's a
mean,
really good strategy.
like I said, if you've never had that much money before and you haven't ever, it's a skill, just like anything else. I would encourage a lot of people as these assets appreciate, if we do get them put to work in the capacity that many of us hope as utility driven assets that maintain their price at certain levels, I
Mhm.
think we're going to move away from this cyclical behavior in the market for some of the assets. And the strategy, if it's predicated on that, it's going to be very different than if you think this is going to fall by 90%. You definitely want to take profits if it's going to fall by 90%. So again, also depends on your thesis for where the market's going to go in the future. And it's never wrong to take profit. It's never wrong to de-risk and diversify your portfolio, especially after you've made a bunch of money. But again, I would highly recommend either working with you guys or with us or other
Mhm.
professionals to make sure you do have a plan and you're able to execute on it.
Yeah, that's good. You answered one of my questions, but I'm going to make you go into more detail when I get to
Okay.
them. I know we could sit and talk for hours. I tell that to every YouTuber. I'm like, we just all get along. We all think the same. It's like, it's just fun to talk back and forth. Okay, let's see. Many viewers believe once XRP starts to pump, it will never retrace. Yet we know all markets have highs and lows through adoption. Amazon did it. Google has done it. Like what goes up does come down eventually. I guess the question is, do you believe XRP will retrace into a bear market? If so, why or why not?
It depends on the value it gets to, right? So kind of what we talked about at the beginning, if we don't see that $50 to $100 price point, there's really not enough liquidity in XRP for it to start facilitating global payment flows.
Mm.
And if it moves up and then retraces and doesn't ever get there, sure, we could continue into a bear market. Maybe you only get the $10 to $13 XRP. I
Okay.
tend to think opposite of that. I do think that we are going to have a significant catalyst, a supply shock that pushes it to those values. And at that point, they will need it to be able to settle the back into the stock market or some of the, FX flows potentially in Japan. I've made a video about that, or even Swift. A lot of people have talked about that. I don't know that it'll be Ripple and their software that ends up being the deal for Swift. Maybe it's R3, but it doesn't matter because XRP is still the primary settlement mechanism. So,
Mhm.
with all that said, watch the price. If it gets to a level where it can be used, I think that it would maintain price stability there and continue to push higher over time. If it doesn't make it to those levels, and again, that's why I think there needs to be a coordinated effort to get it there.
Mhm.
Then, yeah, you're just going to have a continual, process and cycle like we have in the past.
Good. That's good. Let's see. In the crypto space, risk tolerance is usually a driving factor for
Yeah.
buying and selling. When deciding to buy or sell, what questions should a person ask themselves as far as risk tolerance? Because, you know, like you said before, people are different stages. Some have retirement, some have pensions, some just have their paycheck. So when you're going into an asset space right now that's highly volatile, what would you tell someone who's maybe newer in the space, less than a year? Because we have a lot of people who have just stumbled into the
Figure it
space.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What advice or encouragement would you give them about their risk tolerance or how should they know how to proceed?
I would say that diversification is a hedge against ignorance.
Mm.
So, in looking at Warren Buffett, he's been very successful over his lifetime, averaging 20% a year in the stock market. If you're going to learn from anybody, probably the guy to do it, right? So when approaching anything new, he stayed out of Apple for a long time because he didn't understand it.
Mm.
And maybe you dip your toe in the water with somewhere between, 1 to 10% of your portfolio. If you are a higher net worth individual and you're just looking to get an allocation in the asset class, could be even less than that. We work with some families that are a 0.25% of their total, net worth that they're investing in digital assets. But for them, that could be millions of dollars. So it's very different than the average Joe that's working, a W-2 that only has $60,000 a year in income.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably going to have to allocate a pretty significant portion of your discretionary income to these assets to get to a level where you're going to be able to retire, right? And then you have to have that conversation with yourself. Am I okay with the risk that I'm going to lose this money if I am ignorant,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would highly recommend educating yourself, making sure that you understand the asset class, the protocols, the use cases, the teams, what this actually is, before you're moving in a very meaningful way, whatever that means to you when it comes to your income and your total net worth. Um, and again, working with an advisor is probably going to be a really good option for that. You may not have enough to work with us if you're less than 100,000 XRP or $500,000 in portfolio value. But there are other advisors that are starting to come to our door, and we're working with to be able to facilitate something that would kind of bring this to the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Because to your point, there's a very big gap. There's not a whole lot of people that if you're just getting into the space and you take it to your financial advisor, they're gonna be like, don't touch it, just put it in stocks and over here where I can manage it and make my fees.
Exactly.
So it's hard to find the right people. So
Mm-hmm.
again, kind of going back to the self-education piece, if you have high conviction, you've done your research, and you're not ignorant, then I think you can put a lot of your eggs in one basket. But if you are new and you don't feel that comfortable with it, I would probably stay with the lower end of that, just as a good rule of thumb.
That's good. That's good because I know that different people are at different places, and I think on David's channel, and I know you've said it several times, even in this interview. Research, research, research. If you really understood what you have, then you would be more confident in your investment strategy. But if you're just doing it because the UPS driver said it, or your neighbor said, hey, I'm in this investment, and you really don't know, then how do you have any confidence in it? Because it's just
Right.
hearsay. And then the price fluctuates. You buy it at $3.10, it goes to $2.98, and you're like, oh my God, I've lost my
The emotion.
portfolio. And
Yeah.
people jump in and out of the market all the time doing that, and they don't realize that they're hurting themselves because they don't understand what they have. And it's like, it's okay if it retraces, you're going to be fine for the
I
long
would
term
also I'd
goal.
also look at these investments as investments. So
Yeah,
and to reframe that for people, if you're making an investment in something, it's a 4-year time horizon at a minimum
good.
that you're looking to take profits. If you're trying to day trade this or get rich quick, probably wouldn't put a large amount of your net worth in it, right?
Mm.
Because you are going to have large fluctuations in the market, and it's very difficult for people to pick tops and bottoms.
Yes,
Time in the market is always going to be timing the market.
that's good.
The highest value portfolios at Schwab and Fidelity and all these other large investment firms um, are dead people,
Mm.
people that didn't have beneficiaries on their accounts, that their children or whoever was with them didn't know about. They don't have a direct relative. Those assets just continue to compound and grow, sometimes even for decades, with nobody claiming the assets or managing the accounts. And so that's again proof that if you just set it, forget it, it's extra, don't think about it. That's
Mhm.
probably the best investment advice that people can live by.
That's good because David and I talk about when we were telling people, our family or friends, we'd say, pretend you went on a Mexican vacation or a cruise. It's gone. The money's gone. Great
Yeah.
experience. Just go for it and let it ride.
Yeah.
Don't keep looking at your cruise pictures every day, saying, "Oh, I remember that was such a great cruise. That was such a great cruise." And so we're trying to encourage people, set it and forget it, exactly like what you said. That's a really good way to say it. I like that,
Yeah.
Jake. That's good. We should coin that phrase. Set it and forget it. Quote by Jake Claver. That's good. Um, the let's see, bonus question I think we're going to go into right
Okay.
now. So the bonus question is, what is your price prediction this bull cycle for the next 6 to 9 months? not long term, but like right now? Because I know everyone's just hanging on till the end of the year, but let's go between that and a little bit longer. Like, what do you see, or explain what your theories are for saying that?
I mean, so I've made a public bet that XRP will be over $750 by the end of this year.
Okay.
Most people have seen that at this point. It is a real deal on Twitter. Current value of that bet today is somewhere around $18,000. And I did that because there's a certain number of people that I want them to get their assets back. And so that's why, even if I'm wrong, I still win the bet because people are going to get their money back that had lost money to the better before. But all that said, I wouldn't make the bet if I wasn't confident.
Okay.
And again, it is a culmination of events, macroeconomic events, and other things that would be required to push the price of XRP to high three digits or four digits in a very short period of time. Most people, are used to things moving slowly and kind of trading up, and then maybe there's a parabolic move and a retrace. And so it's hard for people to even fathom those type of price points in traditional constraints of the way the market has moved. Again, I'm predicating this on global macroeconomics and events inside of that playing out, culminating in a supply shock for XRP from the ETFs, illiquidity on exchanges because of Tether's problems, a rotation from Bitcoin's ETFs into XRP's ETFs, alongside other markets having huge downsides so that they're not able to pull from those losses. And the investment banks at this point have systemic risk with Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin were to fall 50, 60, 70% in a short period of time, it would be very difficult for them to get out of those positions because they settle, guess what, T+1. And so in order to be able to de-risk those positions, especially if that happened on a weekend or early on a Monday,
Mm-hmm.
they would
Yeah.
need to do real-time settlement. And the only way they're going to be able to do that is to use Project Ion, which was developed with the DTCC and R3 and finalized in 2022. And again, like I mentioned earlier, XRP is the primary settlement mechanism that they would use. But there has to be enough liquidity in XRP for that. The stock market's $600 trillion. That's the total value there. They're moving somewhere between $5.5 and $6 trillion a day in settlement between clearinghouses and brokers. So if you had an illiquid market because of the reverse carry trade and other problems as well, and you needed to de-risk and you couldn't pull from traditional markets, the only option they will have is to drive the price of XRP to a value that they can use in that circumstance. So again, predicated on all these events playing out, which I do think could happen in as little as 4 months, but very likely in the next 6 to 9, I do see XRP being somewhere in the four-digit range.
Okay, that's good. And so you are believing then what you said earlier, that it's not going to play out gradually, pretty much. It's going to be some kind of event or something that will cause it to and go up. Is that
Correct. Yeah,
correct?
there
Okay.
needs to be, for that to play out in that manner, there would absolutely have to be a systemic catalyst that was a global problem for it to reach those levels. But with the reverse carry trade where it's at, with interest rates about to change in
Mm-hmm.
September here, both domestic in the US and in Japan, I feel very confident that, sometime in Q4, we could absolutely see a very high priced XRP.
Okay. And so when you're talking about the catalyst, leads me to my next question. Many economists are predicting an economic crash, the dollar's crashing. So do you feel like that's a catalyst? That's one part of the thing, that if the economy crashes or the dollar crashes, that could be the very thing that would shoot XRP up to those prices?
Well, so to your point, in the circumstance that I've described, there would be a deleveraging of treasury bills. All of the foreign debt would flow onto the market because people would be selling their US treasuries as yields fall and trading those for yield in the GPA or the, I don't know if that's the acronym, you can wipe that part, but the Japanese bonds.
Okay.
And if there's that rotation happens, all of those treasuries flood onto the market at the same time. It's about 2.3 to 2.6 trillion dollars in debt outstanding outside the US, with Japan holding most of that, around 1.6 trillion dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Japan and Russia have already sold off a large portion of what they had before, which has been bought up by Tether. And so with the stablecoin bill here being passed and in effect at this point, We haven't seen a bunch of stablecoins launched yet, which is interesting. I think, again, that'll be all at the same time to
Okay.
be able to soak up those treasuries as they flow back onto the market to stabilize our debt market in the dollar. And that will be great for the US dollar. I don't think that we're going to see the crash or the horrible scenario play out like a lot of people have described, where people are vacating the dollar and it's no longer the global reserve currency. I think that we will maintain not the same position globally once all this rolls out, but a very strong position in the global economy relative to our GDP. We will still be the largest player, and I do think that the dollar will end up being shored up by hard assets, gold, oil, and maybe some XRP as well.
Hmm. So you don't believe that there will be an economic crash, or that people will be affected by these events that are coming to play in the crypto market and in the economy?
I think that it'll be very similar to COVID. I think that it'll be a very sharp retraction,
Hmm.
um, and they've already got things ready to go in the background to be able to move out of there in a V back to the upside and to the right. The progress on that, with AI and these other technologies that would be implemented across the economy in the next decade, I think that you could see an even higher bull cycle. The amount of deflation and additional GDP that'll be generated from the addition of these technologies to our economy is hard to even conceive. So with that, the economic value and everything that we're producing will be real value for the first time in a long time. We've just printed a lot of this in the past with M2 money supply, continue to grow to the upside. With this, they'll also be able to reduce M2 money supply because of the velocity of money. The velocity of money will pick up substantially. And so to actually keep there from being additional inflation, they're going to have to drastically reduce the M2 money supply that people are concerned about. But if you knew that all of this deleveraging and depreciation was coming, you would front run it. And I know people are upset about that, but if you knew that the event was coming, you would front run it so that you would get that soft landing, right? You would be able to pull from that and kind of smooth that out, because if you didn't front run it, it would be even worse in a deflationary crash.
Hmm.
So
So you believe there's winners and losers then, like people who are invested in the digital asset space, they're an understanding of what is coming and the shift that's going to happen. They will be in a much better position, even if they held and it did go down like in COVID and then pop back up. But you feel like there will be winners and losers possibly, and if for that person who's not into cryptocurrency, they have really no clue what's happening. They don't even think anything big deal is going to happen. They might fare worse than the people, like the ones that are watching our channel, that are aware of what's coming.
markets are always a zero sum game, unfortunately. There are winners and losers in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And people that understand where the market's going are the winners, and the people that don't know what's going to happen tend to be the losers. And we talked about people being emotional and selling the bottom. Probably going to happen, right? People get scared, and rightly so. Nothing wrong with that. But if you have conviction in what you're invested in, then you can hold through that volatility. I would say that the standard of living that most people operate under will get better on the other side of the advent of these technologies, and on the other side of this global crisis that's going to unfold with the reverse carry trade and the domino theory and everything I've put together.
Mm-hmm.
Your standard of living will come up. There may even be, I know people are concerned about UBI, but there may be some type of freedom dividend or stipend that you receive from the government to help you maintain a higher standard of living than you do today. So I'm very hopeful on that. I don't look at it as dystopian. I'm kind of middle of the bell curve. There's never a like utopia or dystopia. There's good and bad with everything. And it's really just how you look at it, right? But as far as people positioning themselves in the market to make profits and better, their position economically, there's definitely going to be winners and losers, and those that are in digital assets, in the right digital assets, and understand, what they're invested in and why, I think are going to do very well as things move forward.
That's good. So basically, this is your free for all. Anything that you want to talk about or address in your final thoughts, or things that maybe people are misunderstanding that you have said, because you are all over the internet. Like everyone is quoting you. Every coaching session, everyone's like, I'm holding, Jake said 750, I'm waiting. And I just, Jake bet on this and he must know
Yeah.
something. And so I think I just want to give you this opportunity just to either clear up anything, final thoughts, final words before we end the interview. You got the floor, Jake.
Thank you for that. And I would say this, I am very bullish on the asset. I did make a bet, but at the end of the day, the price movement that I'm talking about and discussing on all of these forums and in all the videos, and maybe they clip it out, there are constraints that have to be met. There are catalysts that have to happen. And
Explain that again in detail, because people don't want to hear that. They hear the price and they're like, click, and they turn off the video. So
right, people
yeah,
people hear a time frame and they hear
and
a
they're done.
price, and that's all they hear.
Yes.
I'm telling you, all of these other things have to play out for that to happen. Am I confident that that will take place? Yes. But that doesn't mean that I'm telling you for sure it's going to happen by the end of the year. It is predicated on all of these events taking place for a supply shock on XRP in the public markets and its utility, and all of, we at least got the stablecoin bill, so that's a big piece of it. Tether, the reverse carry trade, like there's so many things that all have to culminate perfectly to see that price. But again, most people just hear the price and time frame and they're like, "That's what you said." It
Exactly.
is, but the but is all of these other things that have to actually happen for that to take place. So, could it take longer? Sure. Everything that I'm seeing shows that it's not, and so that's why, again, that I'm as confident as I am. And again, if you make a bunch of money in digital assets, if it really does go to those values, we would love to help you at Digital Ascension Group. We're a multifamily office. We specialize in digital assets. We're the only people that provide an end-to-end solution if you've made your wealth in crypto or preparing for a wealth event in crypto. So wealth management, CPAs, accounting, estate planning, tax attorneys, end-to-end, everything that you would need domestic in the US. And we also have foreign partners as well. We have institutional custody. What does that mean? It's segregated, bankruptcy remote, insured FBO accounts where you maintain custody and ownership of the asset. You have your spouse, your beneficiaries on those accounts. We're able to generate returns on them today. We're looking at creating yield-bearing interest products for those assets where they're just sat there in your account, don't have to do anything, make money on them. We provide lines of credit or the ability to borrow against those assets today. And again, not advocating for that. Sometimes that's right for people, sometimes it isn't. We provide you the advisors to make sure that you're making the best choices for you, where you are now and where you want to go in the future. So if people, want to work with us, we start with the estate planning a lot sooner than the wealth management piece. We'll work with people that have somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 in their total crypto portfolio to position them correctly for the price appreciation. But the wealth management does require at least XRP or at least $500,000 in total portfolio value. And we would love to work with you, with our partners Anchorage and Securitize, and all of our other fund admins and everything else that we've put together to make sure that you have the capability to make the most of your wealth in crypto.
And maybe you won't answer this question. I don't know. It just came to me. Sorry, you were supposed to have the final word, but I guess I'm going
Good.
to.
I'm okay with that.
So if the utility does not happen as fast as you're seeing right now or hoping for, like we all are, what would your price prediction be if it wasn't until next year? So if people are hanging on till the end of the year, they need money, and they're like, well, if it doesn't pump to 750, what do you foresee if everything kind of just stays the same where it is and it kind of gets dragged on into next year?
26.
What do you predict the price increase may be between now and the end of the year without all the catalysts coming into place? Just a conservative prediction.
The volume that we already have on XRP right now is not driven by retail. It's institutional. They're averaging into the market to be able to hold price here at $3. If it was going to, be at these levels driven by retail, we would have seen it during the lawsuit. So there's already institutions moving in here with treasury plays, the ETFs buying up, enough XRP to support those spot ETFs. We've had multiple people come out and say that they do expect the ETFs to go live this year. So let's put everything else aside
Mhm.
and we just say we get ETFs, and that's the only thing that happens here in 25, and we don't get the other catalysts.
Right.
I could see somewhere between conservatively or even to the high side. A lot of people are saying $10 to $13. I think that somewhere between $20 and $25 is very reasonable if we have the inflows from the ETFs, similar to Bitcoin, right? Like we saw a big
Right.
move even before the halving. It was at an all-time high, which we've never had before, and it was because of the inflows from traditional finance inside those products and available to the public markets. So I do think that, excluding all other catalysts and just having the ETFs this cycle could push XRP to somewhere between $10 and $25.
Okay. Well, that's good because I just think people need to kind of see where we're at, and of course we all know that what's coming. We all know that your prediction is probably even low, to be honest, when
Yeah,
everything goes into full play. I mean, it's
for
going
sure.
to explode for sure. But I think just people seeing, okay, if those catalysts don't happen, Jake, still has a prediction that it's going to go up, it's going to be good. And so I
Yeah,
wanted not to give
and
you an
people aren't going to
out
be
because
mad.
you don't need an out. Your price predictions, are solid, but I'm just saying if it doesn't happen, because you can't control, if it was in your control, I'd say wave your magic wand, Jake, let's all get 750 today. But you're foreseeing what's coming, but you also have to let people
Well,
understand
and
that it's
I
when
think
those
people
things happen, it will happen.
I think people respect me for not hedging.
Yes.
Uh, I'm not hedging, right? So if I appreciate you asking the question. But I am confident that all of these things do play out. Do they take 6 or 9 months? Possible. But with all the constraints that are happening in macro right now and the shift in the interest rates, where everything's at, still looking for that spike in oil to cause the Bank of Japan to have to raise interest rates aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I wouldn't make these bets if I didn't think it was going to happen. But to your
Right.
point, maybe it does drag out a little bit longer than what I've stated. And if we only get one or two of those pieces and they're not all the perfect storm, I think a $10 to $25 XRP is reasonable if you want to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. That's still a
No,
really
it's
good price
still
when you're buying it at 50 cents, $3. That's still a good return,
doing
better
pretty
than in
good
the stock market.
for
So,
sure.
yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, Jake, thank you so much for your time. I know you are so crazy busy, and it's been a real blessing to have you on the show, and I really appreciate your time. I want to encourage you all to sign up for Digital Ascension Group if you can. Contact um, his business and make sure you like and subscribe this video to help us out. We're trying to get David to 100,000. And please, if you're not signed up with Jake, which I'm sure everyone is already, sign up for Jake's channel and let's give both of our channels a really big pump. But to say all that, thank you, Jake, so much. I really appreciate you, and I wish you all the best between now and the end of the year.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Judy.
Oh, you're welcome. Take care. Bye.